For this week's Preppin data, we've been given a lovely pivot table that's been created by someone to help us be able to read across the region and the bike type and the profit and the sales for each different month. So you can imagine this as an Excel file. Maybe you'd have the ability to filter to certain bike types. Maybe these would be multiple headings that we've got, this like hybrid month and then measure value. But then when it's read into prep, we get this slightly less pretty version. So let's go ahead and clean this up so that we could actually make use of this in Tableau Desktop. Okay, so let's start off with renaming some fields. So if you haven't seen it before, then there's this rename fields option up the top here, which allows us to replace the text. So at the moment we've got 3 underscores next to each other, where we want this instead to be counted as a dash. So you can see where it highlights all of those 3 underscores, all of these fields. It's saying 144 fields are going to be affected, and we just want to replace that with a space instead, or a space dash space, something like that, to split it up. So I'm going to just X there instead because I've already done that renaming here. So I chose to put a space dash space in between all of those. And then I also did another rename to get rid of the single underscore between the month and the year. So it's really nice to be able to quickly rename all of those fields. So that's already making it slightly easier to read. So once we've done that, we can pivot. We're using a wildcard pivot here to find any field name that has a dash in it. So we could have done this with the underscore before as well, so that all gets pivoted nicely. So when we do the rename fields, you may notice that our view has now changed and we're just seeing the metadata. So the field names and types. To get back to our profile pane, just make sure you come up here to show the profile pane again. Okay, so that's already looking like it's going to be a lot easier to work with. So we've got information about our bike type and then the date and the measure. So we probably want to split out these values so that we have separate columns with that information in. And then finally, we'll make a sales and a profit column rather than having them as a measure names field. Okay, so let's go through these changes. So first of all, we find out our pivot one names field and we do a split. We're going to split on the dash here so that we get our bike type name, our date, and we also get our measure name out here as well. And then we can just remove this pivot one names. So just a reminder of how to do that. The split values, custom split on the dash, make sure that we're splitting off all the fields there. Okay, and that will give us those 3 additional fields. Then we get rid of that field and we start doing a little bit of renaming, changing our data types so that at the moment our date field is as a string. So if we change it to a date, then we get that it goes to the first of the month for each of those. And then finally just renaming that to be a month as well. Now, as I was saying, we want to pivot those profit and sales values to be their own columns. So if we go to our pivot step again, and rather than doing a rows, columns to rows as we were before, we'll do a rows to columns this time. You can see the difference in how the steps look in the flow. Very nice to have that visual representation. And into our top bit up here, we put in the pivot one names split 3, so the profit and the sales, and then we bring in our pivot one values down into the bottom section there. And now we have something that we can work with much more easily. We can compare the sales and profit over time for each region, for each bike type, rather than having to just read across that big long table. We have that now in a much easier to digest table that we can read into Tableau Desktop and work with. So thanks very much for watching. Hopefully that was an interesting challenge for you and something that maybe you've come across in your own work from time to time.